I'm Dr. Brian Sather, and today's sport ethics topic is pandemics and COVID. COVID being a pandemic. Currently, we're not meeting as a class because of COVID. This same sport ethics class last winter, 2020, was meeting regularly, having great discussions when the pandemic hit. So I'm trying to practice going up through this talus field without using my hands. Lost it there. So we were meeting as a class regularly, and then the information started coming through about the virus hitting America. No one seemed to care when it was over in China and other places. There's a pika down there. Oh, sweet. Cute guy. I'm sure you can't see it on the film. Those are rare. They love it. Rocks like this. Oh, little furry guy. Huh. Usually I don't see him. I just hear him. So anyway, the pandemic hit, and as a class we were discussing the ethics behind, mainly we were looking at the Olympics, because the Olympics were going to be in Japan. They were concerned whether or not they should even go on, and little did we know it was just a full-scale shutdown. Kind of snowballed. I think the main issue was, had a couple NBA players test positive, and once the NBA shut down, that set a precedent for all other sports. Before long, the Olympic Committee was saying, Japan was saying, nope, we're not having the Olympics. So this last summer, we missed out on the Olympic Games. And so back to the topic, COVID. As a class, early on, I think before even the NBA shut down, I decided it wasn't worth it because we were so far along in the term anyway. Just from a beneficent standpoint, we don't need to meet. It's just not worth it. So it's kind of a risk-reward thing, because we pretty much had accomplished what we needed to. So that was it. That was the end of that term, meeting in person, online exams, and we have yet to meet as a class since. And so definitely uncharted territory in sport. We haven't seen it in the modern era, full-scale shutdown like happened. So we need to ask, a really steep section here. All right, I'm going for it. We need to ask the question, in sport, what are the moral principles by which we govern decisions in a pandemic? So there's obvious beneficence. It's a universal principle to do no harm. We shouldn't create extra cases of COVID just because we're playing sports. So we would be creating harm. But at the same time, we also have responsibility. Back in the discussion on the Olympics, lots of people, sponsors, and several entities that invested a lot of money in having the Olympics. So don't we owe a responsibility to our sponsors to go on with the games? Now, a little caveat there. It might be questionable to even say that money is a moral value. Could it be something that's amoral? Or, in other words, amoral would be something that's neutral. It doesn't have anything to do with morality. Maybe people's reaction to money is immoral or moral. If you give money to someone else, and philanthropy, that'd be considered doing a good deed. But you know, if I owe someone, if someone's paid me a lot of money, is it immoral to, you know, just tell them it's responsibility wise, we can't do this from a beneficence standpoint? And so maybe we don't owe them from a responsibility standpoint. So anyway, that's kind of a side note. Money in and of itself could be looked at as maybe a moral neutral. So with morality, we're looking at our actions, what we do, good and bad, character wise. So those are a couple issues. So I'm going to pose the question about what's the right thing to do in a pandemic. But the other issue too is all athletes, almost all athletes, have a very, very short window, a very short career. Like maybe like NFL, I think averages 3 years. That's it, your career is 3 years. So COVID takes out 1 year of your 3. You know, some athletes, it's just 1 year. That's all they had in sport. That was their only chance to make money. Look at college, 4-year playing career. Look at high school. I mean, you might only be playing varsity 1 year, 2 years. So what about all of the seniors, you know, lost out on that opportunity to play? So maybe we owe a responsibility. This is kind of the top here. I'm gonna find a spot to set up, finish what I'm talking about. So maybe we owe this responsibility to our get a tripod set up. A nice backdrop of the sun. Yeah, beautiful. So maybe we owe this responsibility to athletes with such a short career to just say, we got to go on with this. It's very important. Because the careers are short anyway, we must give people this opportunity, because it's really a shame if you go, like, let's say we blew off 2 years of sports and we have some people that all their high school memories related to sport just absent. They never got a chance to do that. Or on the flip side, we could say, well, sport is really not that important. Beneficence rules everything. We are not going to do harm. So before I get to my questions, I have one more thing to throw in, and that is, sorry, I gotta hydrate. What about sport itself? If we're saying beneficence is the issue, maybe the sport is more harmful to the person than actually COVID is. We're looking at people in the prime of their life. You look at high school students, we know that COVID is not affecting younger people like it is the older people. And so really, like, the damage that the sport has, like let's say football and getting a concussion, or softball and getting a concussion, soccer, these sports where we have high incidence of concussion is going to damage your brain for the rest of your life. So COVID seems like it has less effect than that. Wouldn't I rather have my brain functioning and maybe my lungs not functioning? I'd prefer taking COVID over a concussion. I'd like to have a good brain for the rest of my life. So the sport itself, all kinds of injuries happen in sport. Sport is not the most healthy thing to be involved in. Even death, like there's probably more chance you're going to die playing a sport than you are going to die from getting COVID playing the sport. So why would we limit participation? In fact, if we're really concerned about beneficence, we shouldn't be doing the sport itself if it's worse than COVID. So so that's just one other thing to throw in there. So from a responsibility standpoint, beneficence, all these things factored in, how should sport deal with a pandemic? So what would be the best approach to adhere to moral principles. And then the second question I would pose is, what sport has done the best from an ethics standpoint to balance all those factors I talked about? And what would you say the sport that got it right so far? Because we're seeing at this point sports playing. We have the NBA doing it without fans. So we could argue the NBA is great because we are only exposing athletes and coaches, and those are the people that for the most part are not going to suffer as bad from COVID. And we're keeping the fans away, and the fans are usually going to be the older population. So are they doing it right, or are sports like the NFL that allow some fans out there, or some high school sports are doing that too? Are they doing it right? Or look at the NCAA, they're starting to resume games. They're deciding they're going to play. The NAIA had canceled the fall sports. Did they do it right? So which example have we seen so far that's done it right? Can we predict the long-term repercussions of what has been done? Was it right just to open it all the way up? Is that fine? Should we have done it that way? So we at least have some examples now, and we're seeing some results with some of the COVID positive tests, and then how sports have dealt with it. Is baseball getting it right? Are they doing it right by kind of separating leagues and playing in kind of isolated locales? What sport do you think has done it right? And if you were a coach, how do you think you would handle, or if you're an athletic director, how would you handle the pandemic? What's the best moral approach? And state the principles to support your argument. All right, class dismissed. I'm going to go down, do another lap here, maybe visit my pica friend. I don't know, is it pica or pica? I don't know, I need to look up the pronunciation on that. But I'm going to do a couple more. I'll finish probably with the headlamp. Such a beautiful night. All right, class dismissed. I'll see you again.